In the complex hierarchy of male archetypes, one stands apart from the traditional alpha-beta dynamic. The Sigma male, operating on the periphery yet wielding silent influence that often exceeds those at the center of social structures. What makes the Sigma truly fascinating isn't just his independence, but the paradoxical way his greatest strengths simultaneously push others away. Welcome to Why Sigma Males Push People Away, your definitive guide to understanding the psychological mechanisms that create both the Sigma's power and his isolation. Whether you're discovering these patterns in yourself or trying to comprehend someone in your life who embodies these traits, this analysis will illuminate what mainstream society consistently misunderstands about the Sigma archetype. Before we dive into these 10 critical aspects of Sigma psychology, take a moment to subscribe to Official Sigma Male. Our channel delivers insights that the mainstream deliberately obscures, revealing the hidden advantages in behaviors society has conditioned you to view as weaknesses. Each video provides strategic knowledge that transforms perceived social limitations into extraordinary leverage. Don't miss our upcoming content that will continue building your arsenal of Sigma strategies. Now let's examine the first fundamental reason why Sigma males naturally create distance from others. 1. Strategic solitude. The Sigma male's relationship with solitude fundamentally differs from how the average person experiences isolation. While most fear being alone, associating it with rejection or failure, the Sigma recognizes solitude as his most powerful environment for growth, clarity, and achievement. This strategic approach to isolation creates immediate friction with a society built on constant connection. The Sigma deliberately limits his social exposure not from inability to connect, but from understanding the hidden costs of unfocused social engagement. Each hour in low-value social situations represents an hour lost from his mission, a calculation that naturally reduces his social availability. Consider how this manifests in daily life. When colleagues gather for after-work drinks to decompress through shared complaints, the Sigma often declines. When friends organize weekend activities centered around passive consumption, he frequently creates space for his personal projects instead. This selective participation in social rituals reads as rejection to those who don't understand the strategy behind it. The modern digital ecosystem particularly clashes with the Sigma's approach. In an era where constant availability through messaging and social media has become the minimum expectation, his deliberate communication gaps create immediate distance. His periodic disconnection from digital validation cycles appears as disinterest or arrogance, rather than the focused discipline it represents. What others fail to understand is that the Sigma's strategic solitude serves specific purposes beyond merely avoiding distraction. In isolation, he detaches from groupthink and social conformity pressures that would subtly influence his decisions. He processes experiences without external interpretation filters. He reconnects with his core drives without social noise distorting his priorities. For the average person programmed to fear missing out, the Sigma's comfort with solitude creates immediate discomfort. His ability to decline social engagements without explanation or guilt triggers insecurity in those who measure their worth through social inclusion. Rather than recognize his discipline as strength, they interpret his selective participation as judgment of their social dependencies. The cruel irony emerges when the Sigma, after periods of productive isolation, returns with greater insights, skills, or clarity than those who remained in constant social circulation. This visible progress from strategic solitude further distances him from others, as it demonstrates an alternative path to growth that challenges their assumed necessity of constant connection. Emotional detachment as protection. The Sigma male develops emotional detachment not from inability to feel, but as sophisticated protection against manipulation and wasted emotional investment. While society celebrates emotional expressiveness and vulnerability as universal virtues, the Sigma recognizes the strategic disadvantages of unregulated emotional engagement. This calculated emotional distance manifests in ways that others find deeply unsettling. During conflicts, while others escalate through emotional reactivity, the Sigma maintains rational analysis. During group celebrations or crises, while others amplify collective emotions, he maintains his emotional sovereignty. This controlled, emotional temperature creates immediate distance from those who measure connection through shared emotional intensity. In professional environments, this detachment provides significant advantages while simultaneously. This calculated emotional distance manifests in ways that others find deeply unsettling. During conflicts, while others escalate through emotional reactivity, the Sigma maintains rational analysis. During group celebrations or crises, while others amplify collective emotions, he maintains his emotional sovereignty. This controlled emotional temperature creates immediate distance from those who measure connection through shared emotional intensity. In professional environments, this detachment provides significant advantages while simultaneously pushing people away. When projects fail, while colleagues process through venting sessions and blame distribution, the Sigma moves directly to objective analysis and solution development. When office politics create emotional turbulence, he remains focused on performance metrics rather than relational dynamics. This emotional independence often labels him as cold or robotic to those who process experience primarily through emotional channels. The contrast becomes particularly evident in romantic contexts, where conventional relationships develop. Through escalating emotional investment and vulnerability exchanges, the Sigma maintains emotional self-sufficiency regardless of connection depth. His ability to walk away from situations that don't serve his interests, regardless of emotional attachment, creates distance from those seeking emotional interdependence as relationship foundation. What most fail to understand is that the Sigma's emotional detachment isn't about suppression, but regulation. He hasn't eliminated emotions, but developed sophisticated filtering systems that process feelings through rational evaluation before expression. This emotional discipline creates both his unshakable presence and the distance from those who interpret emotional regulation as emotional absence. For the average person whose decision-making, self-worth, and connections are heavily influenced by emotional states, the Sigma's detachment feels like rejection or superiority. They perceive his emotional self-sufficiency as statement that he doesn't need their validation or support, a realization that naturally creates distance as it challenges their assumption that emotional interdependence is universal. The ultimate irony emerges in how this emotional detachment paradoxically enables deeper, authentic connections with the few who earn his trust. By eliminating emotional manipulation possibilities from his relationships, the Sigma creates space for connections based on genuine value alignment rather than emotional dependency, a distinction that most never experience. 3. The burden of high standards. The Sigma male carries standards that extend far beyond what society typically encourages, creating a natural filtering system that few can pass. Unlike the social climber who adjusts expectations based on status or utility, the Sigma applies consistent criteria across all relationships and environments, creating boundaries that most won't even attempt to cross. This standards-based filtering system operates most visibly in his professional domain. Where others might tolerate mediocrity for social harmony, the Sigma expects excellence, regardless of feelings involved. when projects underdeliver, while colleagues offer reassurance about good enough. He identifies specific improvement requirements. When team members make excuses, while others provide comfort, he expects accountability. This unwavering quality focus creates immediate distance in workplaces built around mutual validation rather than excellence pursuit. In intellectual contexts, his standards create similar separation. During discussions, while most prioritize social agreement over accuracy, the Sigma values precise thinking and intellectual integrity. He has little patience for logical inconsistencies, unsupported assertions, or intellectual fashions substituting for reasoned analysis. This commitment to cognitive discipline naturally distances him from those who navigate intellectual spaces through social alignment rather than rigorous thinking. Consider how these standards affect personal relationships, where most expand their social circles through proximity and convenience. The Sigma evaluates potential connections against demanding criteria, consistency between words and actions, intellectual honesty, genuine reciprocity, and demonstrated integrity over time. This thorough vetting process eliminates most potential connections before they begin, creating a reputation for being hard to get to know or impossible to please. What others fail to understand is that the Sigma's standards aren't about arrogance, but integrity. He applies the same exacting criteria to himself that he expects from others, often pushing his own development with intensity that would break most people. His standards represent his definition of a life well lived, rather than a tool for judging others. Yet the natural comparison creates distance nonetheless. For the average person who navigates life through compromise and social accommodation, the Sigma's uncompromising standards feel like implicit criticism. Rather than rising to meet these standards, most simply avoid the discomfort by creating distance from the person whose existence highlights the gap between their potential and their choices. The paradox emerges when this standards-based filtering occasionally reveals someone who meets or exceeds the Sigma's criteria. These rare connections often develop extraordinary depth and loyalty precisely because both parties recognize the exceptional nature of finding someone who doesn't require them to lower their standards. Rejection of social validation. The Sigma male operates outside the primary currency of social ecosystems, validation. Unlike most who calibrate their behavior, appearance, and even opinions to maximize social approval, the Sigma bases decisions on internal metrics, largely immune to external validation pressures. This validation independence manifests most visibly through his indifference to status markers that others invest heavily in acquiring. Designer brands, luxury signifiers, prestigious affiliations, and other social capital tokens that most display prominently hold little intrinsic value for the Sigma beyond their practical utility. This rejection of status performance immediately separates him from social circles where such displays serve as primary connection points. In conversation, this independence creates further distance, while others carefully manage their expressed opinions to align with what will generate approval. The Sigma states perspectives based on his actual analysis, regardless of how they'll be received. When popular narratives contradict his observations, he doesn't adjust his views to increase social acceptance. This intellectual integrity often labels him as contrarian or difficult in environments where social harmony takes precedence over truth pursuit. Consider social media contexts, where this rejection becomes most evident. While most carefully curate their online presence to maximize validation metrics, the Sigma either maintains minimal presence or uses these platforms strictly for utility rather than validation collection. When others post for reaction harvesting, he shares only when specific strategic value exists beyond approval accumulation. This different relationship with public validation creates immediate separation in an era where online affirmation has become primary social currency. What others fail to understand is that the Sigma hasn't rejected validation from arrogance, but from recognizing its hidden costs. He's observed how validation-seeking behaviors subtly corrupt decision quality, redirect energy from genuine achievement to its appearance, and create dependencies that others can exploit for manipulation. His rejection represents strategic independence rather than social criticism. For the average person deeply invested in validation economics, the Sigma's independence threatens their entire social value system. His ability to operate without the approval they organize their lives around acquiring suggests either that their pursuit is unnecessary or that they lack the strength to break free from it, both realizations that create immediate distance rather than self-examination. The irony emerges in how this validation rejection paradoxically generates intense interest. The less the Sigma appears to need others' approval, the more they feel compelled to earn it, creating a natural authority that stems not from seeking influence, but precisely from appearing uninfluenced. 5. Time as the ultimate resource. The Sigma male's relationship with time fundamentally differs from the average person's, creating immediate friction with social expectations built around casual time expenditure. While most treat time as abundant, resource to be filled with activity, the Sigma guards his time with extraordinary discipline, recognizing it as his most irreplaceable asset. This time, consciousness manifests most visibly through his selective availability, where others might reflexively accept meeting invitations, casual hangouts, or social obligations. The Sigma evaluates each against specific value criteria. He ruthlessly eliminates low-return time investments regardless of social pressure to participate. This calculated allocation immediately pushes away those who expect time without delivering commensurate value. In professional contexts, this time discipline creates further separation. During meetings, while others engage in social performance and politics, the Sigma focuses exclusively on meaningful contribution. When discussions drift from substance to socialization, he either redirects to purpose or exits entirely. When colleagues extend work activities through inefficiency, he maintains boundaries that preserve his time for highest value activities. This efficiency orientation often labels him as intense or antisocial in workplace cultures built around time filling rather than value creation. Consider how this affects communication patterns. While most respond immediately to messages, regardless of importance, the Sigma batches communications into designated periods to prevent constant interruption. While others engage in extended small talk before addressing substance, he moves efficiently to core matters. While many spread simple information across multiple exchanges, he consolidates to minimize future time requirements. These communication efficiencies create distance from those who use communication primarily for social bonding rather than information exchange. What others fail to understand is that the Sigma's time discipline isn't about importance, but effectiveness. He hasn't rejected connection, but optimized it through quality over quantity prioritization. His time boundaries protect not just productivity, but the mental clarity that superficial social obligations often erode. This disciplined approach preserves his capacity for exceptional focus when it matters most. For the average person who measures relationship investment through time spent rather than value exchanged, the Sigma's selective availability feels like personal rejection. They interpret his boundaries as statement about their importance rather than reflection of his universal time principles. This misalignment naturally creates distance as they seek connections with fewer perceived barriers. The paradox emerges in how this time consciousness ultimately enables the Sigma to be fully present when he does engage. By eliminating the scattered attention of overcommitment, he brings exceptional focus and engagement quality to interactions he determines worthwhile, creating connection depth that those with universal availability rarely achieve. The calculated risk of vulnerability. The Sigma male approaches vulnerability not as emotional necessity or connection obligation, but as strategic decision with potential benefits and significant risks. Unlike the contemporary push for universal vulnerability as relationship foundation, the Sigma carefully calculates when, how much, and with whom to reveal his inner world. This calculated vulnerability manifests through his selective disclosure patterns, where others might share personal struggles, insecurities, or failures broadly to generate sympathy or demonstrate authenticity. The Sigma reveals vulnerabilities only with specific purpose and to carefully vetted recipients. This selective openness creates immediate distance from those who expect vulnerability exchanges as relationship currency. In group settings, this calculation becomes immediately apparent. During team-building exercises designed around personal disclosure, while others share significant vulnerabilities, the Sigma offers measured insights that appear substantive without exposing exploitable weaknesses. During social bonding through shared insecurities, he listens more than reveals. This asymmetrical participation naturally separates him from trust-building cycles built on mutual exposure. Consider professional environments where this calculated approach creates further distance. When failures occur, while colleagues seek connection through shared admissions of weakness, the Sigma acknowledges mistakes without unnecessary emotional elaboration. When personal challenges affect performance, while others might seek accommodation through vulnerability displays, he addresses issues directly without leveraging sympathy. This functional approach to difficulty disclosure often reads as emotional unavailability rather than boundary maintenance. What others fail to understand is that the Sigma's vulnerability calculation isn't about emotional capacity, but strategic protection. He's observed how casually shared weaknesses become leverage in future conflicts, how vulnerability often attracts those seeking psychological advantage rather than connection, and how oversharing frequently serves others' entertainment needs rather than creating genuine understanding. For the average person who navigates relationships through early vulnerability exchanges, the Sigma's calculated approach feels like withholding or distrust. They interpret his selective disclosure as inability to connect rather than sophisticated boundary management. This misalignment naturally creates distance as they pursue connections with lower perceived intimacy barriers. The irony emerges when the rare individual earns the Sigma's trust through demonstrated integrity over time. The vulnerabilities he eventually shares with proven allies often possess exceptional depth and authenticity, precisely because they weren't readily available to everyone, creating connections of extraordinary trust with the few who understood that genuine vulnerability must be earned rather than expected. 7. Truth over comfort. The Sigma male consistently prioritizes truth over social comfort, creating perhaps his most active mechanism for pushing others away. Unlike most who navigate relationships through strategic agreement, validation, and occasional necessary deception, the Sigma operates with radical honesty that many find intolerable despite its ultimate value. This truth orientation manifests most directly in feedback contexts. When asked for opinions, while others calibrate responses to maintain harmony or avoid offense, the Sigma provides his actual assessment regardless of reception risk. When ideas, creative works, or proposals have flaws, while most offer reassurance or diluted criticism, he identifies specific improvement requirements. This commitment to accuracy over sentiment immediately distances him from those seeking validation rather than growth. In group discussions, this principle creates further separation. When popular narratives contradict evidence, while others remain silent to avoid conflict, the Sigma questions inconsistencies. When collective decisions are forming around emotional appeal rather than effectiveness, he highlights rational concerns despite social pressure to align. When conversations drift toward comfortable falsehoods, he redirects toward uncomfortable realities. This truth advocacy often labels him as difficult or unnecessarily negative in social systems built around mutual comfort rather than accuracy. Consider relationship contexts where this orientation creates significant friction. When partners seek reassurance about unrealistic aspirations, while most provide encouraging falsehoods, the Sigma offers realistic assessment with improvement pathways. When friends make self-destructive choices, while others offer unconditional support, he identifies concerning patterns despite discomfort. When family members maintain harmful dynamics, while most preserve peace through silence, he addresses dysfunctions directly. This commitment to truth over harmony creates immediate distance in relationships built around mutual validation rather than authentic growth. What others fail to understand is that the Sigma's truth orientation isn't about superiority, but integrity and long-term compassion. He's recognized that comfortable falsehoods provide immediate emotional ease, while creating compounding future harm, while uncomfortable truths might cause temporary pain while enabling authentic development. His preference for addressing reality directly stems from caring about actual outcomes rather than momentary feelings. For the average person, navigating social spaces primarily through harmony preservation, the Sigma's commitment to truth, regardless of comfort, feels like unnecessary harshness or social ineptitude. They interpret his accuracy prioritization as lack of empathy rather than different strategy for helping. This fundamental values misalignment naturally creates distance as they seek connections with less perceived emotional risk. The paradox emerges when life inevitably reveals the consequences of comfortable falsehoods. The business that fails despite reassurances, the relationship that collapses despite validation, the health that deteriorates despite comfort. In these moments of reckoning, many return to the Sigma precisely because his uncomfortable honesty suddenly appears as the authentic care it always represented. Freedom through disconnection. The Sigma male pursues personal freedom through strategic disconnection from conventional dependencies, creating a natural barrier between himself and others deeply embedded within traditional social systems. Unlike most who build security through increasing interdependence, the Sigma systematically eliminates unnecessary attachments to maximize his autonomy. This freedom orientation manifests through his minimalist approach to possessions and obligations. While others accumulate status markers, complex financial commitments, and extensive possession networks, the Sigma maintains remarkable simplicity, not from resource limitation, but strategic choice. He recognizes how each acquisition and commitment subtly constrains future options, creating golden handcuffs that limit his ability to pursue opportunity or escape unfavorable conditions. This lifestyle simplicity often appears as either financial limitation or social rejection to those who measure success through accumulation. In professional contexts, this disconnection creates further separation. While most pursue career security through institutional loyalty and specialized skills tied to specific organizational systems, the Sigma develops portable capabilities and maintains independence from any single income source. When employment conditions become unfavorable, while colleagues remain trapped by golden handcuffs, he can exit without catastrophic disruption. This career independence often reads as lack of commitment or ambition rather than strategic mobility. Consider relationship patterns where this principle creates significant distance. While most build connections characterized by escalating interdependence and mutual obligation, the Sigma maintains self-sufficiency regardless of relationship depth. He approaches partnerships as voluntary associations between independent individuals, rather than merging of needs and identities. When relationships become constraining rather than enhancing, while others remain trapped by emotional or practical dependency, he can disconnect without identity collapse. This relationship independence often labels him as afraid of commitment rather than strategically autonomous. What others fail to understand is that the Sigma's disconnection isn't about rejection, but selective connection from position of choice rather than necessity. He hasn't eliminated attachment, but transformed it from dependency-based obligation to value-based voluntary association. This fundamental reframing threatens social systems built on the assumption that proper relationships require escalating entanglement. For the average person whose security derives primarily from institutional structures, financial obligations, and relationship dependencies, the Sigma's self-contained approach feels like arrogance or rejection. They interpret his systematic independence as statement that conventional security systems are inadequate rather than exploring whether their own dependencies truly serve them. This recognition naturally creates distance as it challenges their fundamental security model. The ultimate irony emerges when external conditions collapse conventional security systems, economic downturns, institutional failures, relationship dissolutions. In these moments, the Sigma's strategic disconnection suddenly appears as the wisdom it always represented, revealing that true security comes not from dependency, but from the freedom to adapt without catastrophic disruption. The intimidation factor. The Sigma male radiates a natural intimidation that creates immediate distance without conscious effort. Unlike tactical intimidation deployed for dominance, the Sigma's effect stems from his embodiment of qualities that trigger insecurity in others through mere presence rather than active behavior. This intimidation factor manifests most visibly through his uncompromising authenticity. Unlike most who adjust their personality, opinions, and behavior based on social context, the Sigma maintains remarkable consistency regardless of environment. In professional settings, while colleagues adopt corporate personas, he remains unchanged. In social gatherings, while others perform expected roles, he maintains his natural demeanor. This authentic presence creates immediate discomfort for those heavily invested in social performance, as it highlights the gap between their presented and actual selves. In conflict situations, this intimidation intensifies through his emotional stability. When tensions escalate, while others engage in emotional displays, manipulation tactics, or power demonstrations, the Sigma maintains composed rationality. When personal attacks emerge, while most retaliate emotionally, he responds strategically or disengages entirely. This unshakable composure during conflict creates psychological disadvantage for those who rely on emotional reactivity to gain leverage. Consider decision contexts where this effect creates further distance. When group pressure builds toward consensus while others conform despite private reservations, the Sigma maintains independent judgment regardless of isolation risk. When authority figures expect deference, while most comply automatically, he evaluates directives based on merit rather than source. When social conventions dictate specific behavior, while others follow without question, he complies only when alignment exists with his principles. This decision autonomy often labels him as difficult or rebellious in hierarchical systems dependent on conformity. What others fail to understand is that the Sigma's intimidation effect isn't about intentional separation. but authentic integration of his internal and external worlds. He hasn't rejected connection, but eliminated the performance barrier that prevents genuine engagement. This congruence creates both his unshakable presence and the distance from those uncomfortable with authentic interaction, uncushioned by social pretense. For the average person navigating life through adaptive personas calibrated to each social context, the Sigma's integrated authenticity feels simultaneously attractive and threatening. They sense both the freedom his congruence represents and the significant identity work required to achieve similar integration. Rather than undertake this challenging development, most create distance from the person whose existence highlights the gap between their current and potential selves. The paradox emerges in how this intimidation factor simultaneously repels the many, while magnetically attracting the few capable of similar authenticity. Those secure enough to engage without performance often develop unprecedented connection with the Sigma precisely because his authenticity creates space for theirs, revealing that what intimidates most actually liberates those ready for genuine engagement. 10. Power in selective relationships. The Sigma male approaches relationships with extraordinary selectivity, creating perhaps his most sophisticated social strategy. Unlike the conventional approach of building extensive networks based on utility or circumstance, the Sigma invests deeply in a handful of high-integrity relationships that provide both his greatest strength and most effective filter. This relationship selectivity manifests through his extended evaluation period. While others form connections based on first impressions or immediate chemistry, the Sigma observes potential relationships through multiple contexts and challenges before substantial investment. He notices how people treat those who can offer nothing, how they behave when unobserved, and how they respond to both success and adversity. This thorough vetting creates immediate distance from those seeking quick intimacy or strategic advantage. In established relationships, this selectivity continues through his zero-tolerance approach to integrity violations. When trust is broken, while others might preserve connections through compromise or denial, the Sigma immediately recalibrates relationship investment regardless of duration or depth. When patterns reveal value misalignment, while most maintain relationships through mutual pretense, he addresses incompatibility directly or disengages entirely. This uncompromising integrity stance often labels him as harsh or unforgiving in social systems built around accommodation rather than accountability. Consider professional networks, where this approach creates further separation. While others distribute connection energy across extensive low-integrity networks, the Sigma concentrates investment in a select alliance of proven individuals. When opportunities arise, while most leverage them for broad social currency, he shares them primarily within his high-trust circle. When seeking collaboration, while others prioritize status or visibility, he selects partners based solely on integrity and capability. This quality over quantity approach often appears as exclusivity or elitism rather than strategic resource allocation. What others fail to understand is that the Sigma's relationship selectivity isn't about superiority, but effectiveness. He hasn't rejected connection, but optimized it through concentrated investment in relationships capable of extraordinary depth. This approach recognizes that connection quality creates more value than connection quantity, a principle that challenges mainstream social accumulation models. For the average person navigating social spaces through broadly distributed, conditional engagement, the Sigma's selective approach feels like judgment or rejection. They interpret his thorough vetting as statement about their inadequacy rather than universal system applied to everyone. This misalignment naturally creates distance as they pursue connections with lower perceived entry barriers. The ultimate Paradox emerges in how this selectivity creates relationships of exceptional quality precisely because of its filtering mechanism. Those who earn positions in the Sigma's inner circle often experience unprecedented loyalty, support, and authentic engagement exactly because they passed standards that eliminated connections incapable of such depth. The Sigma male's natural tendency to push people away isn't a defect in his design, but the necessary boundary mechanism that preserves his greatest strengths. Through strategic solitude, emotional detachment, uncompromising standards, validation independence, time consciousness, calculated vulnerability, truth orientation, freedom pursuit, natural intimidation, and relationship selectivity, he creates the conditions that enable his extraordinary development and authentic living. What appears as coldness or rejection to the masses is actually clarity. The Sigma hasn't abandoned connection, but refined it to its most meaningful essence. In doing so, he discovers what few ever realize, that the relationships that survive, his natural filtering process, possess depth, authenticity, and loyalty that compensated connections never achieve. If you recognize these patterns in yourself, or someone significant in your life, you've glimpsed why the Sigma approach represents not social failure, but strategic success. Subscribe to Official Sigma Male now to continue this journey into Sigma psychology. Unlike channels that offer surface-level tactics or temporary validation, we provide fundamental understanding that transforms perceived social weaknesses into extraordinary strengths. Remember, what most interpret as pushing people away, the Sigma recognizes as his most valuable filtering system. The people who truly belong in your life won't be deterred by your strength. They'll be drawn to it precisely because they possess the rare capacity to recognize its value.